Not all arguments offer the same kind of support for their conclusion. Some arguments attempt to merely make the conclusion more probable or likely, while other arguments attempt to show that the conclusion will follow without exception or must be the case. In the following module, we'll turn our attention to the two types of arguments on offer, inductive and deductive arguments. Second part of step one is, well then, what kind? So yes, there's an argument here. What type of argument? Okay, so every argument is either one or the other, right? It's either going to be deductive or inductive. Every argument. Okay? It's one of these two types. And really, it comes down to one thing, what the difference is. And it really comes down, I guess in some sense, to the intention of the person giving the argument. Okay, do they think, and you might have noticed the way I've been putting this, support or prove the conclusion. I keep saying that. Well, support, do the reasons, premises support or prove, right? Support or prove. That is the imperative or the key distinction here, right? If the premises that are given are thought to just make this more likely, but not necessitate, demonstrate, require, right? No exceptions. The conclusion, if the person who's offering their argument just thinks that their reasons make this more likely to be the case, but don't require it to be the case, okay, then they're offering an inductive argument. They're just supporting the conclusion, the reasons do, right? Versus sometimes somebody will give an argument and they think, well, look, given these reasons, this has to be the case. Just given the form of the argument itself, in some sense, right? Provided these are true, this has to be the case. There's no way it can't be the case. They think not just that they're supporting their conclusion, making it more likely. They think that given their reasons, they've proven it. It has to be the case. They've demonstrated it without exception. Okay, now again, they could be wrong, and we can assume these are true and this doesn't have to be true, but that's what they think. Okay, if that's the case, then it's deductive. And that's really the difference. Now, a lot of times, when we're trying to figure this out, we don't have the guy or girl that's offered the original argument in front of us. We can't ask them questions. Well, what did you mean by this? How did you intend this? Right? We kind of have to work with the context of what they said, and that's where indicator words might come in. Words like always, 100%, 0%. Okay, those are not allowing for exceptions. If you're getting verbiage like that, okay, it tends to be indicative of deductive arguments. Okay, versus, so compare 100% versus 99.9%. Okay, there's a difference there, an important difference, and it signals the difference between these two. Okay, if one of the premises read 100%, that is probably going to be deductive. But as soon as they say 99.9999999%, that's allowing, even if it's true, it's allowing for the possibility the conclusion could still be false. Do you guys see that point? And that really is the difference. Okay, there's something about a deductive argument. We'll get into this, kind of the upshot of a sound deductive argument, where there's that necessity of the conclusion, or at least the person that's offering the argument thinks that the conclusion, right, has to be the case, given the reasoning involved. Okay? Whereas that, even in the best inductive arguments, there's always that possibility that the conclusion could still be false, right? And the person offering the argument acknowledges that. So the examples I usually give, a deductive argument, classic example, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Okay? It's a classic deductive argument, just given the form itself. Right? The conclusions are thought to prove or necessitate or demonstrate the conclusion. Someone offering that, right? They're thinking the premises are necessitating the conclusion. Versus my typical example for an inductive argument. I know nothing about the statistics regarding weather or anything like that. But imagine we had a farmer in here and he said something like, there was a 22 mile per hour southerly wind yesterday, therefore it's going to rain tonight. Right? He's probably well versed or familiar with maybe the almanac or weather statistics and is familiar with tendencies and correlations and whatnot, and understands that there's a strong likelihood following a certain wind strength in a certain direction that the next day maybe there's rain, or the next night, right? So he might make let's say, putting this in terms of betting, right? He might make a large bet depending on how significant the correlation is between a certain wind strength the previous day and then rain the next day. But he would never bet his life, right? Even the farmer's not saying, given that the wind was a certain strength, it's absolutely going to rain, right? Probably not, right? He's not thinking that his argument is necessitating, or the fact that that there was a strong wind yesterday. He's not suggesting it absolutely necessitates reign today then. It's just more likely. You guys see the difference there? Okay, so maybe he should bet the farm. I guess it depends on how significant the correlation is, right? But he definitely wouldn't, or it wouldn't be wise to bet your life, okay, in those cases, okay? Because, again, even if it's a 99% chance, it's not 100. Okay. It's just very likely, but not necessitated. So that really is the difference. So sometimes it can be as simple as like tweaking a word or two, and it turns from deductive to inductive or vice versa. Okay, so it really comes down to, again, and you got to do your best to kind of interpret this. What the person offering the argument, did they think their premises or reasons necessitated the conclusion? It has to follow given the reasons, or it's just more likely. Okay, so is it supporting or proving? Are these premises supporting, right, or proving the conclusion? Okay, that's the difference. Now that we've distinguished between deductive and inductive reasoning, we can turn our attention to how to evaluate or assess these arguments. We'll begin by discussing deductive arguments and how we assess them using the concepts of validity and soundness.